Juan Gabriel feels like the right vibe for
You
today.
can never go wrong. You can never go wrong with it.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
What's the song that you get to pump
You know, I'm more of a podcast person. I listen to a little bit of everything. If I'm with my team, I listen to whatever my team is listening to. But I love to listen to motivational, inspirational podcasts. It just gets me in the right mindset. Also, I love both of your jerseys.
Nice.
You guys are winning points.
Nice. Love to hear it. Yeah, I think I host a podcast, so I better say that I'm a podcast person. But yeah, no, I think podcasts help out because they kind of level you out. You don't want to get too hyped, right?
Yeah, for sure. I have those teammates that get like super duper hyped, but then there's that teammate that's like headphones on, and that's normally me.
Okay, cool.
Getting in the zone. How about them Chivas?
How about them Chivas Femenil? That's what we got.
Right.
Oh yeah, that's game.
Right.
Oh, that was intense.
Did you watch it, Michael?
Of course. Ooh, those goals kept coming.
Yeah. I was just like, out to watch from home, and I'm like jumping off my couch. I get like, yeah. So I can imagine how you guys were.
That was a great game.
Can you hear me?
Maybe a little preview of a championship. I don't know. We'll find
Maybe you'll be writing about that probably pretty soon.
Hey.
Also, I gotta break the ice. I'm barefoot. This luxury of doing this from home is that I can be barefoot, and I absolutely love to be barefoot. If you know me, it's just like done with training, shoes, socks off. Get home, every shoes off. It's like
You gotta do
love
it.
it.
Sounds dope. I'm kind of the same way, so it works for me. And we just passed the 100 mark, so we got a huge crowd already. And we had 550 registered, so it's going to be a good crowd today.
Oh, all right.
Welcome everyone. Bienvenidos a todos. Pretty cool to have a crowd like that.
Yeah, happy Latinx Heritage Month to everybody. Shout out to National Coming Out Day that's coming up.
Exactly. Thank you for getting that started. Yeah, these are so many reasons to be proud, right? Are we good to go? Should we get this kicked off?
Yeah, let's do this.
Yep.
All right. Here we go. We're gonna go ahead and get started. So I'm gonna pull up. Perfect. All right. Well, we're gonna go and get started. So bienvenidas, welcome. Thank you to everyone for being here today. We have a great crowd, and we're extremely excited to engage in this critical conversation with all of you. Given our huge crowd chiming in from all over the world, I'd like it if you could just take a second to let us know in the chat where you're zooming in from. When I looked over the registrations, I saw that there are people from Guadalajara, Tijuana, Los Angeles, Cambridge, Chicago, Irvine. So if you could put in the chat where you're from, we'd love it. I already see Coral Springs, I see Jackson Heights, I see Madrid. This is dope. So we're already spanning so many places: Cambridge, Berkeley, Chicago, Guadalajara, Portland, Boston, San Marcos, Israel, Cuernavaca. Ooh,
Nice.
Great Ciudad de Mexico, Riverside. Okay, we got a very international crew, so this is perfect.
Nice. Global up in here. I love it.
For real. And so as y'all are letting us know where you're from, I'm gonna give a little bit of an overview. My name is Michael Angel Rodriguez Vasquez, and I'm a PhD student in education here at the Harvard Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. I'm also an intellectual and cultural fellow for the GSAS Student Center, vice president of the Latinx Student Association, and vice president of Solidarity for LGBTQ at GSAS. Today's celebration of Latinx Heritage Month, National Coming Out Day, and LGBTQ+ History Month is a joint effort between our three organizations, as well as the Harvard Gender and Sexuality Caucus, the David Rockefeller Center for Latin American Studies, Lambda at the Harvard Law School, QT at the Law School, and the Graduate Student Council. As an important side note, all of our organizations would like to encourage you, if you're able to vote. There are 52 million folks of Latin American heritage in the United States, and there are at least 9 million LGBTQ plus folks who are registered to vote in the country. So if you can, please show up. And if you are unable to vote for whatever reason, please encourage those around you to do so, because it's important. Now, we are very excited to get this started, as are all of you. But first, we want to express our immense gratitude to so many people and organizations that made today's event possible. So gracias a The Marketing Jersey, Apoyo Tricolor Femenil, Tri Femenil MX, Foot Femenil MX, Chivas Femenil English, FootMex Nation, the Our Football Podcast, Football Ace, Campeonas MX, Femenil al Minuto, Diosas Olímpicas, Mujer Fútbol, Ellas en el Deporte, The Athletic, Copa 90, Apuntes de Aragona, Mexico Versus, Backline Soccer, Her and Ella, Outsports, and a big special shout out to the amazing players of the WNBA. It's very important that we recognize all of these communities for their work in regularly bringing up activism and identity within sports. It's these sources that introduce these topics to us, to many of us. And so without you all, we wouldn't even be having this conversation today. So thank you for the work that you do. As we approach the end of Latinx Heritage Month and the beginning of LGBTQ plus History Month, it's so important for us to have these intersectional discussions. That's why I'm so proud that we're bringing in the spirit of Gloria Anzaldúa, activist, author, and poet. Anzaldúa taught us how so many parts of our identities make us feel like we're stuck in between. Many of us feel like we're neither here nor there, ni de aquí, ni de allá. There are so many societal borders that divide these parts of ourselves: sexuality, ethnicity, culture, race, language, and so on. But today we're going to channel Anzaldúa, channel her energy, and embrace all aspects of ourselves. So in her honor, we're going to go ahead and get started with our speakers. Just as a quick caveat, we are filming this, and shortly after we will be offering it with English and Spanish subtitles so that everybody can engage in the conversation moving forward. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, as far as our speakers go, first we have sports journalist Sandra Herrera, a proud queer Mexican-American woman from Chicago. Sandra is a regular contributor for CBS Sports. She's from Chicago and has written for various other publications. She's also co-host of the Southside Trap podcast, which features the Chicago Red Stars. And if you didn't know, she is from Chicago. Next, we have Yaneli Farias, an out and proud Mexican-American professional soccer player for Chivas de Guadalajara and the Mexican national team. Yaneli was a sports commentator during the 2019 World Cup in France. And she's a former anteater from UCI, so Zat Zat, my siblings went there. She's represented Mexico at different levels, and we can't wait to see her hopefully in New Zealand and Australia in 2023. So without further ado, we'd like to welcome both Sandra and Yaneli to Harvard. Bienvenidas.
This is awesome. Thank you to everybody who's already been mentioned for helping to really bring this together and bring Yaneli here to Harvard University, invite me to be along to help moderate a conversation about navigating borders and what that means for so many of us living within these communities, right? So we're just gonna dive right in. Yaneli, are you ready? Let's do this.
I'm ready, but before we get into it, I want to give a big thanks to Michael. Thanks to you, we were able to put all of this together. We need more people like you in this world. You forgot to thank yourself in that whole 10 minutes you spent thanking all of the people that made this possible. So I didn't want to forget that. I'm ready.
All right, let's get into it, guys. Let's talk about anything and everything, right, Yaneli? To start things off, we're gonna just dive right in the opening questions here. So in your own terms, you know, we're talking a lot about recognizing Latinx History Month, right? We're talking a lot about recognizing National Coming Out Day that's coming up. So within those identities, on your own terms, how would you describe yourself? How do you identify and why? What are parts of your identity that are perhaps more salient than others at this time?
Well, before I get into that, and I think throughout this conversation, you all will get an opportunity to see a bit of who I really am. It's important to recognize that sometimes these topics are sensitive. They can be sensitive. So when I invited when I started inviting people to this talk, I posted a video saying, come with an open mind, come with an open heart. And I genuinely mean that, because I know for a lot of us, sometimes we don't know how to talk about these things, and that's okay. That's okay. That's why we're here having this conversation. So just, I ask that you listen with an open heart, open mind, and hopefully you can take one positive thing from this conversation. And to answer your question, Sandra, man, I can go on so many different routes. It's difficult to, in a few sentences, tell you this is who I am, because I think there's so much behind a person, because our identities are multidimensional. They're so fluid. There's so many things that make us who we are. But if I can give you a brief summary of how I identify, I would say that I'm a person that lives and is driven by anything that comes from love. I am purpose-driven, proud, courageous, resilient, a constant fighter of anxiety. It's so important to mention that. Mexican American. I was born in the United States, but from Mexican parents. My dad was born in Jalisco, here in El Estado de Jalisco. My mom in Michoacan. They both migrated to the U.S. to give my brothers and I a better life. I identify as a lesbian woman. I am an athlete before I am a soccer player. I'm an aunt. I'm such a proud aunt. If you know anything about me, you know that my nieces and nephews are everything to me. I live for them. I'm a sister, a daughter, a friend, and above all, I'm a person that is in constant process of learning about herself. And in that process, I am doing my best to contribute what I can to this world. Like I said, my parents were born in Mexico. They migrated to the US. They sacrificed so much. They crossed illegally. Gladly now my mom is an American citizen. My dad is still not, but he does have his residency. It's important to mention that, because I know that when people see me, I don't fit the stereotypical Mexican. And I think that's a misconception that we need to change. We look, feel, think so many different ways. There's not just one way to define us. And if I can tell you, like, the part that I currently identify with the most about myself right now is being a Mexican, out and proud LGBTQ plus person. Why? Because in this past year and a half of my life living in Mexico, I've realized that the necessity for people like me for visibility in Mexico, we need it so badly. And right now I feel like in everything that I do, that's something that I'm consciously thinking about, because it's so important that we give our people that visibility.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. That's part of why we're doing this, right? And why you're at Harvard, is to maybe try to change some of those perceptions, or introduce some people to maybe who, have not had an open mind about thinking about these types of things. And listening to you identify yourself and describe yourself, you seem to be very rooted, very, very proud of these aspects of yourself. But was that something that was maybe necessarily always the case, and why or why not?
Well, no. So like you said, right now, I am very proud of who I am and who I strive to be every day, but that wasn't always the case. I've had and something that's still, every time I talk about this, I get emotional, because it's something that it is the most impactful thing in my life. It's been a roller coaster to really come to terms with my identity and all aspects of it, and to really love and accept who I am. I remember when I first realized that I loved another woman, I didn't necessarily question it, but I was scared. I can't lie and say that I wasn't. I was scared. I was like, whoa, what are people going to say about me? And that was there was a lot of questioning involved in the process of my identity. And we're going to get through that in the next few questions, I think. But it's important for people to recognize that it's not always easy and that you're going to struggle, but that's okay. Sometimes we attach this stigma to struggle or to frustration or sadness, and there shouldn't be that stigma, because I think we are built from those moments. We're built from how we decide to respond to and address those moments of frustration, of difficulty. So it's been difficult, and it's still a process. It's still a process, and I want people to know that, because I know they see this really confident, bold, courageous Janelle, right? But if you really, really get to know me, there's a lot behind that.
You know, it's so good to hear you say that, and it's important to hear somebody like you in your position with your platform say that, because everyone's journey is different. And something that I think that people might not understand or recognize or realize when it comes to something of like identifying one's own queerness, that journey is actually always constant and ongoing. And then we have these dynamics of race and ethnicity, right? Faith for some people, right? That come into play when people are navigating these things. And at the top of this hour, to sort of maybe brush upon something that is a race issue, we wanted to touch upon this in the top hour of the hour, because we didn't want this to get lost in translation, but we all felt it was important to acknowledge and address the recent heartbreaking news about Breonna Taylor. She was, for people who don't know, you know, she was a young Black woman from Kentucky who was murdered by police. And we've seen the WNBA and other athletes react to this, and by a larger extent, the Black Lives Matter movement as a whole. So for you, Janelle, given your own personal identities, how is it that people with your platforms can show up in solidarity with other communities that maybe aren't necessarily quote unquote our own?
I think the most important thing about that is to recognize that though we feel like we don't have something in common with other people that are battling something, we relate to others much more than we think. And at the beginning of this Black Lives Matters movement, I honestly, I didn't know how to navigate through it. I was overwhelmed, and I was questioning a lot of things, and that's okay. I think that helps us understand, really understand our values. But it's important for us to recognize that our struggles as a marginalized community all come from the same problem. It's all rooted in the same problem, and that's prejudice and discrimination. So if we see the bigger picture and we look at it that way, it's our fight too. We can do so much to stand up for other people that are fighting for essentially, we're fighting for the same thing. We're fighting to be treated as human beings. We're fighting to be treated as equal. We're fighting to make this world a better place. So it's important that we recognize that oppression is interconnected. It's overlapping. There's so many components to it, and it can't be solved alone. It's not something that is going to be solved alone. I think as we progress in society, these issues are all going to start progressing together. And it's important that, like I mentioned, that we educate ourselves and that we question our values. And if we don't know enough about something, let's educate ourselves on it before we post something about it. Let's make sure that we know the full story before we post something about it. And as an athlete, as a person at this level, I give myself that responsibility to be a voice if I can be a voice. And it's something that honestly has made me realize how connected we are to other people, to other cultures, to other societies, to other ethnicities. It's just, at the end of the day, we are all people and we're all fighting for a better world.
Absolutely. And I know you and I spoke a little bit about this, when we were planning for this discussion and this talk, and the importance that we both felt about bringing this particular issue up primarily, because of that concept of that fight belongs to that group of people, right? And that it doesn't belong to us. And then within that, there's all these other added layers, right? The concept of Latinidad, like what does that even mean? Should we just break that and smash that and start over? you know uh Racism is racism is racism, and it exists. And then you have other things within that, like issues of socioeconomic status, issues of class. And even within that, what does it mean to be upper, lower, middle, or higher middle or class or whatever? And then colorism, right? Colorism is a thing that exists, that navigates, especially when we're speaking about maybe identities that we both relate to, whether it's Mexican culture, growing up Mexican American, or within queer communities. That concept of colorism is something that's prevalent, and how maybe our experiences as lighter skinned Latinas looks different and feels different from other experiences that are out there. And then watching this constant fight and call to action in something revolving the case around Breonna Taylor, and you speaking to the importance of us also needing to show up in solidarity, following really the lead and example of maybe like a whole league like we saw with WNBA. And I know you had spoke a little bit about, within going through your own learning, how you were kind of maybe taking your own cues from them. You want to maybe share a little bit with how your learning process went with that?
Yeah, it's I didn't realize how much is being done in the U.S. Maybe because I'm here in Mexico, and I think my social media filters out different things, and I still haven't figured out the formula of how to see more of what's happening in the U.S. But I've been paying more attention to what the WNBA has been doing, and something that stood out to me is that they're not just speaking about it; they're acting, and I think that's the difference between actually generating change. So many people can actually just speak. It's so easy to speak and post this and say that, but very few people are willing to actually act to make a difference. And that's what's been standing out the most to me with this Black Lives Matter movement. And it's something that I think we can all learn from. I know that not everything's nice and pretty, and some people are against the protests or whatever it may be, but I think it's a learning process for all of us. We don't all have it figured out, but the fact that there are people willing to take action is amazing, and it's something that I'm definitely learning from.
Yeah, and I think as we segue into that, some of what we've touched upon already are about the concept of tough conversations or difficult conversations within these issues, whether it's amongst ourselves or with our families and our friends, and how those things are uncomfortable at times. And I think we would both want to challenge people at this time to try to make sure that they continue to push themselves and challenge themselves, even if that stuff is really uncomfortable, because it really does start with us as we get into all of those intersecting identities within that. I mean, how are we being allies and showing solidarity, not just to the Black community, but to our Afro-Latino and Latinx and Latina brothers and sisters who are also feeling the struggles within that? Like, we absolutely have to do better, right? And continue the process for working on ourselves and with them as well. And within having those difficult conversations, kind of segueing back into what we were talking about at the top of the hour, and talking about how we personally identify, and you speaking a bit about how maybe this always hasn't been easy. And so much of when we're talking about someone's personal journey with its gender, sexuality, and orientation, we hear a lot about that component of how it wasn't easy and how it's difficult and hard at times. So are you comfortable sharing your coming out story? And if so, what what was that like, navigating all the different cultural customs, languages, family dynamics, etc.? And through all of that, were you able to find some sort of support within that and general acceptance of yourself?
Well, this is a story that I've told many times, and every time it's just as hard and never gets easier. So, am I comfortable sharing it? 100% no, but I know that it's necessary. So that's why I speak up. That's why I feel the need to share details about these things, because I know that there are so many people that can in some way maybe relate to my story. It was a very difficult process for me in the beginning. My family at first didn't accept me. And it's something that I'm gonna try not to cry. I always say, next time I talk about this, I'm not gonna cry, but it always gets to my heart. And
Janelle,
at first,
you got this.
Yeah, at first it was one of the most difficult things in my life, because I felt like I didn't have my family's love. And though I know that in the back of their mind and their heart, it was always there. They just didn't know how to express it or how to navigate. I felt like I didn't have it. And I think as human beings, we need love to live. We absolutely need love to live. It is what drives us. It is why we get up every day in the morning. It is why we keep going. It is why we go to work. It is why we do what we do. And maybe there's some people that haven't realized that, but when you realize it, it's gonna click. So at first, yeah, my parents didn't accept me. My brothers, I have 4 brothers who I absolutely love so much. It was kind of like half and half. They didn't know how to navigate through it, but my baby brother was always like, I don't get it, Jay, like you're you, like I don't understand why they're treating you like this. So that it was nice to have that. So by not having this love and acceptance from my family, it was the beginning of a major depression in my life. And I'm talking about years of depression, years of anxiety, years of panic attacks, years of insomnia. And if you've never suffered from insomnia, I hope that you never do. It is the worst form of torture. So it was years. I can't tell you exact time frames of how long that lasted, but it was 2, 3, 4 years maybe of that much pain. And what I realized was that they didn't mean harm. My family didn't mean harm. It was just something that was different to them. And aside from that, I was navigating through the machismo culture that I was raised in, right? This Mexican machismo culture that we have. Don't get me wrong, there's so many things that are beautiful about being Mexican, but I'm in this constant battle with machismo where I fell in love with a girl. I was playing soccer and people would still tell me, no, girls don't play soccer. You can't love a girl. I was in a household where I had to do everything my dad said, and I was treated differently than my brothers because that's the way things are in the Mexican culture, right? Because no, boys can do whatever they want, but girls can't. Boys can go out, but girls have to stay home and do the domestic part of the household, right? So I was battling with that, and then I was battling with my parents' divorce. My parents had recently separated, so it was a lot of different things that just kind of came crashing down at me. I had knee surgery, my ACL reconstruction, so it was, like I said, the beginning of the most difficult part of my life. And then my nephew was born. Cristian Emiliano. He is tears of happiness. He's 9 years old now. And
Great name, by the way.
This
If I might say so myself.
this is actually what I'm going to share right now is something that I've actually never shared before on camera. I was driving down the freeway one time, 91 freeway in California, and I was driving down the freeway 3 or 4 in the morning with the intention of never opening my eyes again. I hit the lowest point of my life because I didn't understand why the people that I loved didn't love me, and I couldn't just grasp my head around it. And instead, I decided to drive to my brother's apartment to see Cristian Mediano. He was like a year and a half. And I remember getting there and hugging him and just feeling the purity in his embrace. And he literally opened my eyes. My life changed. He literally brought light and life to my eyes, and my perspective on life changed. And it's important to share that because so many of us have this fear of expressing our emotions, but it's okay. It's okay to feel these things, and the more we're willing to share, the more we're willing to be vulnerable with people. That's how we really, really develop connections with people and figure out who we really are. That's when my life changed. And I remember telling my mom, hey mom, this is who I am and I need you to love me. And she hugged me and we cried together, and she just said okay, and had to do it twice because my parents were separated. And my dad, he was the one that actually had the courage to say, like, oh, are you feeling like this because of your sexual preference? And I said, well, not necessarily that. I said, I'm feeling like this because you don't accept my sexual preference. And he apologized and hugged me and we cried. And that was the start of something different. That was when I realized this is a process for all of us involved. This is a process not just for me, but a process for my family. And in order for them to accept me, first of all, I need to accept myself. And that's when I said, I love myself the way that I am. And it's necessary for us to say that, say it out loud, right? Once you love yourself, it's difficult for other people to not love you. And when I realized that it was a process for all involved, and I started to educate myself on these things, on mental health, on how to navigate through this, I was able to slowly get my family to come around, right? With education, with exposure, with patience. I understood that it was something different for them. Didn't mean that they didn't love me. They just didn't know how to navigate, and they were scared. They were probably more scared than I was. And it's important to recognize that, because I was talking to my mom today and she said, Mija, she said, your dad and I, we didn't have a book or a guide to tell us how to raise you. And that's stuck with me. And I said, that's why that's where the relevance and importance of these stories come about, because yeah, maybe there's no book on how to navigate through things, but we can learn from other people's stories and other people's experiences. So to sum up my coming out story, it's a constant process. It's a constant thing. I can go on forever about more details, but I think the most important thing that we need to take from this is that it's a constant process for everybody involved. It's a process it was a process for me. It is a process for me. It's a process for my parents, for my siblings, for my friends, for people that I meet, because people have this stereotypical idea that a woman like me is heterosexual. Well, no, I have to make it known that I identify as a lesbian despite how I look. So that's why I say it's a constant process, because there's so many fixed stereotypes that we need to change and challenge. And it's so relevant. Like I said, we can learn from other people's stories, and that's why I'm here sharing these details with you all. And that was the first time I shared such intimate details, and I'm glad that I did. I'm so glad that I did. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to to project the information without getting too emotional, but I was able to.
It's I just want to take this time to thank you for going there. And I know you and I have spoken a little bit about the importance of sharing a story like this, and how integral that is going to be for other people. I had already shared with you that somebody in your position is not just impacting younger generations. Your existence is impactful across all ages. There are, yes, young kids who will view this and feel a connection to that. And there are going to be older generations who are going to hear this and learn from that experience, whether it's just from you specifically or even within your parents. I mean, and honestly, the mistakes, right, that maybe parents make. I think as we become adults, right, we maybe tend to find ourselves relating to our parents a little bit more, understanding that they're human beings with flaws, right? And because we're human beings with flaws, and that it's difficult to navigate those channels, especially when we're living within all of these other aspects of our life, whether it's culturally, bilingually, through, different countries, quite frankly, and things like faith that coming into play. And it is so important to share this type of stuff because everybody's coming out story is different, right? And B, ongoing. That's something that we have spoken about, and that you mentioned here, that you literally had to do it twice with your parents. And that in itself is a level of bravery that maybe some people can't even relate to. I know for me, it was very difficult. I wrote my parents a letter. It was hard to me to sit in front and find the words, and it was heartbreaking. There's always that aspect of heartbreaking stuff. I mean, you have your parents who react a certain way. I mean, my father didn't believe that I wrote it. He didn't believe that I was able to write that type of a letter. It was heartbreaking that he would not only struggle with acceptance, but also the fact that I was capable and talented and able to express myself. And the concept of like breaking your mother's heart, and letting them down, and how the struggle is always ongoing. And I think it's so important that you mentioned about having those very difficult moments with your parents, because similar to me and my own parents, I think something much more special came out of all this pain. And it's that we didn't give up on each other. And, there's struggle and suffering there. And you spoke about being depressed and going through anxieties and suffering from insomnia. And funny story, I can relate to that, and it's difficult to have all of that and navigate that. And then looking back on it and recognizing that certain things maybe didn't happen within our stories, right? We didn't necessarily get disowned. We felt disowned emotionally, but physically, there was not like, ya vete, like get out of my house. In that sense, we were able to be still connected to our families in a sense. And not everybody is able to have that within their coming out story. It's very, very, it's so different whenever you hear anybody's coming out story. It's impactful every single time because it's never the same.
I think it's, sorry if I interrupt you, so important that you say that. It's everybody's coming out story is different, because it is. And that's the beauty of it, like you said, right? And it's also important to recognize that maybe we might not get the response that we're expecting. It might be good, it might be bad, it might be painful, it might be not painful, it might be like, oh, cool. And but it's important to recognize that it's different for everybody. But I think one thing that we all do have in common is that it's liberating. The freedom of truly being able to be yourself despite what anybody thinks of you, despite what anybody says of you, is one of the most beautiful things in this world. When you can come to terms and accept who you are, it's amazing, because at the end of the day, only you define yourself. Don't let anybody else define you. Don't give anybody else that power, right? You are you. You were born as an individual for a reason. And it's okay for it to feel hard. It's okay for it to feel like it's not going to get better. But I can tell you that it's going to get better. It's going to get better, and it's worth it. And embrace however it is that your process happens. And if you're not ready for it to happen, that's also okay too. Don't feel forced or pressured into doing anything that you don't want to do.
Absolutely. Your journey is yours, guys. And along the way of that journey, you do find those people. You do find your people. You find yours. For Janely, she spoke about her brother kind of being that first supporter, you know, and at first someone who was in her corner. And for me, it's similar. It was my older brother. And along the way in this journey that we're talking about is always ongoing and probably never ending. You're going to build and build and build and find more people and hopefully more resources to help you along the way. To transition just a little bit, we're paying homage also to Gloria Anzaldúa, an icon, a queer icon of Mexican descent in herself. And we honor her tonight. And she describes something as Nepantla, and it's this feeling of being stuck in between. So Janely, in your case, you know, you mentioned you were born in United States to Mexican born parents, and just kind of connecting this to soccer, right? Because that's kind of what brought us all here, right? You represent Mexico. You know, you represent a country where you weren't born in, and you navigate multiple languages, border, cultural customs. So what has that process been like? Have you always felt proud and connected to both? Have you felt the torn of like USA, Mexico? Like, walk us through some of that.
I think the flag in the background will speak for itself. I've always felt more Mexican than I am American. I am grateful for everything America has given me. I'm grateful for, right, being a U.S. citizen has so many privileges that I'm well aware of and grateful for. But my heart has always been Mexican. Since I was little, I don't know how or when, but I never once, like, actually remember I had one of my girlfriends said, "Hey, like, you're American, like, come on." And I would be like, "Wait, what?" I would forget that part, right? But it is important for me to recognize that, yeah, I am American. And I'm grateful for my parents always enforcing us, my brothers and I, speaking Spanish in the household. I am so grateful for that, because there's so much value in being bilingual and being able to speak Spanish fluently. And in the moment, I maybe didn't recognize it. Maybe I used to get mad at my dad for, like, I would speak to him in English, and he'd say, "¿Qué? No te entiendo, ¿qué?" Until I said it in Spanish. And now I'm grateful for those moments, because I feel like language is something that allows us to connect on a deeper level to a culture. Language helps us assimilate to a culture. And I didn't realize the impact of language until the last year and a half of my life that I've been living here in Guadalajara, Mexico. If it wasn't for my parents enforcing it so much, and then me somewhere along the way finding a passion to continue learning it, I don't know if I would be enjoying my time here as much, right? It's difficult to live in a place and not speak the language, because how are you going to connect with people? Another important thing to recognize is that the different cultural customs across borders. In terms of my coming out process, I have realized that in the US, my teammates at UC Irvine, where I played soccer, it was like, okay, cool, and like, there was no questioning it. It was very like, all right, cool. And here I've came across a lot of questions like, well, aren't you scared? What's gonna happen if they don't support you? And it kind of like took me aback, and I said, whoa, like, I didn't expect that coming to Mexico. I didn't expect that at all. It was eye-opening for me to see how much need there is for visibility in so many aspects here in Mexico. I think that's something that the reason why I'm so proud of what I'm doing and being out and gay. But it's also like important to recognize that I think cultures are a direct reflection of their society and what's happening in their society, right? In the US, we can argue that it's socially more progressive. In Mexico, maybe it's not seen that way. So that plays a big role in how people view somebody like me being so out and proud.
You know, in terms of navigating those types of things culturally, hearing you talk about how are you going to handle it if they're not accepting of you on this side, we're talking about like not maybe really fitting in, whether it's in the US or
Mm-hmm.
to some extent not really even feeling like you belong within you know, Mexico. And
Mm-hmm.
hearing the journey of players who can represent dual nationally, right? And how even those stories, they have similar threads, but still are kind of different sometimes. What was that like for you, kind of coming to the decision to represent Mexico on a national level?
Mm-hmm.
And what was the experience like? You know, you've got peers like your Maria Sanchez, Katie Johnson, players like Sofia Huerta and Jonathan Gonzalez, you know, going through similar things, but making, you know, some different decisions. And what has that been like for you to sort of have to go through representing Mexico versus the US? And what was the feeling like of maybe having to ultimately choose? And how do you feel about it now?
Well, personally, I never had to choose. I was seen by the Mexican national team when I was 13 years old at Santa Ana Stadium in California, in Orange County. They had scouting there. And it was just, they offered me the opportunity and said, hey, we want you to represent Mexico. And my heart was like, yes. There was no questioning it. And I've been asked plenty of times, well, would you represent the US if you had the opportunity? And no, I mean, I'm Mexican, and I'm so grateful for being brought up in a Mexican household despite living in America. I'm so grateful for the fact that my family continues to live by Mexican cultural customs. And it's something that is a part of me, and it's never ever going to go away, despite me living 99% of my life in the US. It doesn't matter where you are born. What matters is what lights your heart on fire.
I love that. It matters. Write that down, everybody. It matters what lights your heart on fire. Having made that decision, you're playing, you represent Mexico on the national level, but you also play in Liga MX Femenil for Chivas Femenil, and you know, living as an American-born Mexican within Mexico might have some of its challenges in itself. Do you feel like maybe your Mexicanness is called into question maybe by other people when you're representing on the pitch? And what's your response to it?
Yes. I like the word Mexicanness, actually. Yes, I feel like my Mexicanness is actually, it's constantly questioned. It's constantly questioned by people that don't know me. When I first came to Chivas, I know my teammates were they were appalled when they heard me speak Spanish. And they were like, ¿Qué hablas español? Like, yeah, I speak Spanish fluently. And they were just
can't talk about it now.
they were confused, and they didn't expect it, and they would constantly joke about the way that I spoke, but then they realized like, oh no, she actually speaks it fluently, right? So that kind of like slowly stopped happening. And I also feel questioned often in social media, again, like I said, by people that don't know me. So I don't let it get to me. It is frustrating. It is frustrating because people have this idea that, well, if you were born in a certain place, that's who you are and that's it. But that's not the way that identity works, right? You're affected by so many different factors. There's so many factors that play a role in who you are, and it's important for people to know that I was raised in a Mexican household, as Mexican as it gets, to me from my perspective. And like I mentioned earlier, talking about being fluent in Spanish, personally, my fluency in Spanish has facilitated the process of me assimilating into society and culture here in Guadalajara, Mexico, and with the selección. It definitely does have a plus. I think people give me like a different level of respect, or they say, okay, cool, she does speak our language, so we're going to accept her. I don't think it's necessary for you to speak a language for you to be accepted into a culture, but it does make the process easier. And then when people realize a little bit of the passion that I have for representing Mexico, that questioning of my Mexicanness like slowly kind of stops happening. And when they see my love for Chivas, same thing, right? Chivas, one of the arguably the most Mexican clubs in the world. It's like, oh, okay, like, sí es mexicana, ya no le podemos decir nada, you know? So it's something that I am proud of and grateful for my family, especially my dad, for always instilling those Mexican cultural customs in my brothers and I.
It's a blessing, guys. It's a blessing to own your Mexicanness. It's for people who, you know, identify outside of it. It's a blessing. Always remember to rep your set and where you're from. It's a part of who you are, and you should always be proud of it. For staying on the national team, you know, that we're gonna get into, again, this is all integrating itself together, guys. But the Mexican Soccer Federation, you know, has been sanctioned a lot of times because of the use of a very specific word that is yelled at soccer games. And you actually published a very powerful piece in The Advocate last year about your coming out story and the pain that comes with hearing a word like that and causes an athlete like you. What was your personal motivation to write that and acknowledge it, and maybe, you know, what do you think the federation, soccer in general, has to do to make fans and players feel welcome, and has it changed at all? How do you feel about it now?
Well, it's a difficult topic to touch on, but I think we can learn a lot from the recent steps in action that San Diego Loyal team, what they did in this last week. Michael, can you show that slide on Landon, just picture of Landon Donovan, por favor? It is slide 6. Let's see if we can get this up.
You're all about to learn today. You thought you were going to hear some talking.
No, just screenshot this. Simple, right? It says sport as an institution, challenging the narrative. Like I said, right, Landon Donovan, San Diego Loyal team, they walked off the field against discrimination after a player was allegedly subjected to homophobic abuse. All right, you can take it off now. Please screenshot it. 10 seconds to screenshot. We got it. Okay. So it's so important for us to recognize things like that, because I don't want to talk about just the Federación Mexicana. I'm going to just kind of generalize it and say that sport has always been seen as an institution that has the power to create ideologies and has the power to change them as well, right? Sport is a direct reflection of its society. It's so important that we see that, because we learn so much from sports, right? We eat, breathe, live sports, whether it's soccer, football, baseball, right? Whatever it is, it's like, right, we look forward to the weekend to watch that game and drink some chelas with our friends so we can watch our favorite team, right? So we don't realize the magnitude that sports have on our perspective. And what Landon Donovan did with his team really, really stood out to me, because they are challenging the narrative. At the end of the day, that's what this is about. Right? There is this narrative that exists where sports are seen as places that are symbolically connected to gender and sexuality, right? Sport is something that's seen as male men play this sport, and you are masculine if you play a sport, right? And those are things that we need to challenge, right? We need to stop assuming that because somebody is male that they identify as straight, right? It's things that maybe we don't really see the bigger picture in. But anyway, my point is that, like I mentioned earlier at the very beginning of this talk, it's easy for us to talk. It's very easy for us to talk, but it's very difficult to actually speak. It's easy for us to post, and for a club or a team or a federation to post something supporting Pride Month, right? And then what, right? And then what are you doing about it? And that's something that we can learn from San Diego Loyal in the USL and Landon Donovan. They actually took action, right? And the week before that, it was player experience racism. They actually are taking action, right? They are looking at the bigger picture. It's important to recognize that they were actually fighting for a playoff spot in this game. And they said, no, we will rather lose this game, lose our chances at playoffs, because we're going to be winning something bigger, right? We're standing up for something bigger that is treating people right. There shouldn't be any tolerance for any type of homophobic, racism, any type of comments that are hurtful to people and not inclusive, right? There shouldn't be any space for that in sport. And I'm not talking just about soccer. So
absolutely.
Landon Donovan, I praise you, and I hope that more people can follow in your footsteps.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree. I mean, you made so many excellent points there, and that's really what it's about. I mean, we spoke a little about that when we were talking about Breonna Taylor a little bit, and even now bringing up an example of what that needs to maybe look like, right? When we're talking about taking action. And yeah, you hear a lot about things like allyship and what is really the concept of allyship. Like, what do we really mean, right? And I mean like people who are living within these marginalized communities, right? Whether they're Black, gay, Mexican, queer, whatever. And thinking about all the ways in the construct of allyship and what that is. And it's not just about, like you said, just kind of speaking on it a little bit. It's really about being an accomplice, right? It's really about like finding your partners in crime a little bit. It's going to take that. It's going to take showing up and yes, doing the work, right? Educating ourselves and learning. But what are you going to do when you have all of that knowledge within your arsenal? Where is it going? And what are you doing with it? So it was wonderful to see. I'm glad you brought it up, and hopefully everybody did take a screenshot of that for them. In terms of, you speaking a little bit about the difficulties that you faced as an athlete, playing in different countries, having gone through injury, nearly quitting soccer at some point, taking all of those things into consideration, how has soccer itself been a barrier to embracing different parts of your identity? And if it has or hasn't at all, and were there times where maybe it made you feel like you had to perform, a certain type of way, being, whatever, hey, you're a woman playing the sport, or maybe if you had to hide your sexuality, how does maybe on the flip side of that soccer help you actually be your authentic self?
You mentioned something earlier, something that stood out to me, and you said, we're all here because of soccer, right? And I love that because soccer is a universal language. Soccer connects millions and millions of people worldwide. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's the most played watch sport in the world, right? And it doesn't in itself, soccer doesn't discriminate, right? It doesn't tell you can't play because of this. No, anybody can go outside on the street and kick a soccer ball. This doesn't matter where you come from, what you do, how you identify. So in that sense, soccer in itself, to me, is a universal language that can connect us all in so many ways. And personally, it serves as my sweet escape. It's to me, when I'm playing soccer, it's so liberating to me because I'm not thinking about all of the ugliness in this world. I'm not thinking about all the stress that I have. I'm just enjoying it. And I see it as in these last years of my life, I realized that to me, soccer is something so much bigger than me just playing and me lacing up my shoes and stepping on the field. It's a platform. It's a platform that connects us. It's a medium for change. It's a way for us to connect with people that we may think don't identify with us in any way. If somebody loves soccer, then we already have much more in common than they think. Yeah, there are people in it that play. There are people that work for the administration side of soccer that maybe do discriminate, right? But that's what we're fighting against. We're fighting against those people that maybe just don't have the education or exposure that they need to realize that soccer is universal, and nobody can take that away from us. To me, it's a safe space, right? When I step on the field, it's a safe space for me to be exactly who I want to be. And that's why what San Diego Loyals did stood out to me, because they said, well, if one of my players can't be who they are on the field, then we want nothing to do with it. And that's the type of action that we need to take.
Absolutely. It's going to cost, right? It's going to cost a little bit. And slowly but surely, I think people are starting to maybe get that and realize that. And hearing you speak about soccer, like, since this is the medium, right? This is what brought us all together. You know, would you say that it allows you room to embrace and love all parts of who you are? Does that come maybe like do you see that, or is that shown through like soccer, the sport you play, but like does it come directly from like teammates, or even within fans and community bases within fandom?
I think there's a lot of different factors that affect it, but I mean, I feel like with my teammates, like I can be me, and then they might laugh at me sometimes, but I'm me, and they're cool with it, right? And same thing with them, right? It works the same way, right? They're themselves, and I'm cool with it. And there might be things that maybe off the field we don't agree on, but at the end of the day, right, we're all playing for the same badge, and that's what matters. Same with fans, right? Maybe they might not agree with something I do off the pitch, but at the end of the day, they're supporting the same badge. So, like I said, we're more connected than we think.
Absolutely. Guys, to the audience, we're obviously nearing, we're at the hour mark here. So what we wanted to do to sort of transition out of this amazing discussion with Jenely is to take a moment to acknowledge all of you and your presence here with us today. You are here for a certain reasons, whatever those are, they're yours, and we are just so happy for all of you to take the time to spend with us today. And go on through this, and if you want a repeat of it, it's going to be recorded, and we are going to actually get into a question portion of this segment from the audience. There was actually a lot of questions that were received from people who were signing up to hear this discussion with you, Jenely, and we've sort of encompassed them all here at the end of this conversation, because a lot of them had similar themes, right? Talking about navigating all of these things that we have been discussing. So to sort of kick things off, to close out here, to the young people, right? We've had many young people express their gratitude in these questions and answers, and some of them might be struggling with their sexuality or parts of their identity. Maybe they fear rejection for coming out, or they don't feel Latino enough, right? Or Mexican enough, or they aren't XYZ ABC enough. Or even within that all of their existing identities maybe clash a little bit with one another. So do you maybe have any advice for the generation to, as they move forward with their own journey?
First off, I want to say that whoever you want to be, whatever you want to be, it's okay. I firmly believe that as long as you are acting from your heart and from love and not hurting anybody, you can be whoever and whatever you want to be in this world, no matter what anybody tells you. That's so important to recognize that. I know sometimes we try to conform because, well, I need to be this way, because if not, I might not fit in here, or I might not get accepted here, or I might not get this job, or, right, we worry about all of those things when all that really matters is, right, that we love and accept ourselves. And I know that we all go through difficult times, and sometimes we're unsure about who we are or what we're doing, and that's okay. But it's important to know that you matter, even if you feel like you don't, even if you feel like you're being rejected for who you are. You matter so much, and it's something that personally took me years to figure out, and that's okay too. It might take you a day to accept your full identity. It might take you 10 years, right? There is no right way to do it. You are not alone. There are so many of us that are going through similar things, and we don't even know it. And that's why it's important to share these things, but it's okay to be who you want to be. It's okay for you to be confused as well. It's okay for you to feel vulnerable. It's okay for you to be different. Different doesn't mean wrong. Different is cool. It's something that I wish I had known when I wish somebody had told me that when I was in high school. And once you come to terms with your authentic self, you're going to feel so liberated, and you're going to realize that you're not as alone as you think you are. And if in certain occasions of your life you feel this fear that you might be judged or not accepted for being your authentic self, that's okay too, right? All of these feelings that you feel, they're all okay and they're all normal, and I'm here to show you that you can do it too. You can overcome whatever it is that you're struggling with. I promise you, if you can find a way to get through it, it's going to make you so much stronger. And I don't regret any of the pain and struggle and confusion, frustration that I've gone through in my life. I'm so grateful for it because of it, I'm here speaking to you all today.
That's right. You're at Harvard, Chanelly. That's right. One of the questions, of course, was soccer based from the audience. They actually threw it back to 2015 during the World Cup. You know, the Women's World Cup was played on AstroTurf, and there was a ton of, there was a huge response from the players, right, playing within that World Cup. But, many of the male peers have stayed silent. And as women's soccer continues to grow, it's a wonderful thing that it is, right? But there still tends to be all of these barriers in place as it's still finding these little seeps and cracks to grow into and out of. Have you heard maybe more of your male counterparts speak up on social issues as of late? And in terms of solidarity, what would you like to see from El3 on the men's side of things?
If I'm being really honest, there's not much out there. I think, like if we look at the people, the allies that stand up for their counterparts, a lot of it happens in first world countries, the US, more progressive countries, right? US, Switzerland, Australia, like you see their male counterparts standing up for the women's side. And I think that's something that we can learn from here in Mexico. I don't have all the answers. I'm not saying that I'm right, but I do think we can learn from them. Right. And we got to get over this fear and stigma of us worrying about, well, what are they going to say if I stand up for something? Right. And something that I think it's so important to touch on this. Right. There's some people that think if we're talking about standing up for LGBTQ plus rights, there's some people that think gayness is contagious for some reason. They think if I'm an ally, people are going to think that I'm gay. First off, right. We need to get rid of that stigma. So what, right? So what? It's cool, right? People think that I'm straight and I don't get mad, right? I simply educate them, right? So it's important for us to get over that fear and realize that what is contagious is freedom to speak, freedom for others and to be themselves, right? And it's so important for people that maybe don't identify with us to stand up, because at the end of the day, like I said, we are all way more connected than we think.
Absolutely. I love it. You love to hear it. Chanelly, what comes next? What comes next for you? What goals do you have personally moving forward? And what do you hope to accomplish in the name of something like social justice with your own respective platforms?
I have this conversation with my mom often, and I tell her that I want to change the world. And she tells me that I can, which is really cool, right? The only person that tells me that I can. And I know that maybe I can't change the entire world, but if I can change one person's world, I know that I'm doing my job. I know that I'm living my purpose on this planet. I've said it many times before, and my purpose goes beyond what I do on the soccer field. I feel like I can be the voice of many people who haven't quite found their own voice. I want to share a quote with you guys I recently watched a TED Talk America Ferrera. She's actually a Latin American icon making a difference in the TV industry. She said, presence creates possibility. Who we see thriving in the world teaches us how to see ourselves, how to think about our own value, how to dream about our futures. My identity is not my obstacle, it's my superpower. And that's what I want to leave everybody with, right? Like, if I can help people realize that who they are is their superpower, I'm happy. And like Michael said, next World Cup, Selección de Mexico will be there.
Janely, you're already doing it. You're already there. And I know I can't wait to see all of the wonderful things that you're going to continue doing. I can't wait to see what's next for you. It's not easy navigating all of these things within the soccer world, whether it's on the pitch or someone like me who's in the media, the sports landscape of that kind of stuff. And it's always ongoing. And this has been wonderful. And I think now is a good time to have Michael come back and help us close things out, show his beautiful face again, and thank everybody for joining us.
And thank Michael for putting all of this together, for sure.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it all. I had some little tissues, but I just had to grab a toallita because it was just like so much, so many emotions, so much resonance with me. So thank you. That was just absolutely incredible. Thank you so much to the both of you for this enlightening discussion. I could definitely say that as somebody who is out, who is proud, who's Mexican American, who's navigating languages, I feel so affirmed by the two of you. And I know there is young kids out there watching this who really identify with what the two of you are sharing. I cannot express how much your conversation really means to them and what the two of you have done for me personally. So thank you. And to everyone else, thank you so much for attending tonight's discussion. To those of you in San Luis Potosí, Arkansas, Australia, Caracas, Colombia, Guadalajara, Chicago, and so many other places, we appreciate you all. Happy Latinx Heritage Month, happy LGBTQ+ History Month, happy National Coming Out Day. We'll be sharing this video with you all very soon. Again, with English and Spanish subtitles. So stay tuned for that in our follow-up email. And thank you for coming. Muchas gracias. Les queremos mucho. So thank you.
Janely,
Gracias a todos. Gracias.
where can people find you, Janely? How can they engage with you if they want to see what's next?
Simple, at Janely Farias. Any social media spectrum, you'll find me on there. Where can they find you? Because you got a lot to offer us. So
I'm just here, man. I was just like, I'm like everyone else in the audience. I'm just the person representing the audience. No, I mean, if you want to continue to follow my work and the writing that I do about women's soccer, you can do that on Twitter at @SandHerrera_. That's HERRERA_.
definitely, hey, you're breaking barriers too. So I'm grateful that I had this opportunity to talk with you.
And we'll be sharing the links out to your social media in the follow-up email as well. So thank you for that reminder.
Thank Michael.
Thank you all
Have a good night. Everybody vote, please.